What's up, y'all? Today we're in Sandy Springs and we're continuing our vlog tours of the suburbs of Atlanta. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Victor. We put out videos every week about what it's like to live in Atlanta and the surrounding suburbs. We talk about what the community is like. We talk about what the homes are like and the schools. So you definitely want to subscribe so you don't miss any of those. Today we're in Sandy Springs, so let's go check out what this city looks like. This is like the downtown area of Sandy Springs. You can see in the background there, we've got City Hall, and then we've got this like typically green lawn here in the middle of like the downtown area. I guess because it's wintertime, the grass is dormant, so it's more brown today than usual. But typically this is a pretty popular spot for a lot of the people who live in Sandy Springs, especially in the evenings and weekends. It's common to find people out here hanging out, enjoying the day. The stage there in the background where it says City Springs. Again, the city is called Sandy Springs, but there's sometimes different performances there on that stage. And then they've also got the area decorated for Christmas right now. I know this vlog is coming out after Christmas, but I'm filming this in December, so all of these Christmas decorations are super common in Sandy Springs. They have a lot of pride for like their community and pride for the area. So they do a great job of decorating the downtown area here for Christmas. Sandy Springs is definitely one of the more popular suburbs of Atlanta, but it's not like a suburb where you would find a lot of young families. It's more like young professionals living here in Sandy Springs, or a lot of transient people who maybe just are in the Atlanta area temporarily. And one of the reasons for that is that the distance between Sandy Springs and Atlanta is very close. It's very easy to get to the city of Atlanta from Sandy Springs. In fact, the two cities border each other. So you could be, a hop, skip, and a jump away from Atlanta if you live in Sandy Springs. So it's very common for people to live here in Sandy Springs, but travel to Atlanta for work, and they want that convenience, so they live in a city that's just outside of Atlanta. So because there aren't a lot of like young families living in Sandy Springs, you don't really see a lot of good public schools here because there really aren't a lot of kids going to these schools. I think if there are, for the families that are living here with young kids, those kids probably tend to go to like a private school. The public schools here are just not a priority for the city. And so if you are wanting to live in an area that has excellent public schools, Sandy Springs is not really a good city for that. But if you're wanting to live in a city that has, very easy access to Atlanta, or an area that has a lot of job opportunities, then this is definitely a good city for that. Right next to City Hall is the Sandy Springs Performing Arts Center. And again, this is kind of something that's typical of Sandy Springs. You're going to see that there's a lot more things to do in this area. This is much more of a busy city. It's not like a suburban area where the shopping areas and the commercial areas are super spread out. It's more like a densely populated area where the commercial areas are all very close to each other, and you're going to see that there are a lot of things to do here in a city like Sandy Springs. This downtown area, or like city center where we are, is at the intersection of Roswell Road and Mount Vernon Road, or also it's really close to Johnson Ferry Road. And Roswell Road is really considered Highway 9. And Highway 9 is a super important part of Sandy Springs and really all of Metro Atlanta, because it goes as far north as like Dawsonville and as far south as Atlanta. So for the most part, Highway 9, which is this road here, goes parallel to Highway 400. And these two roads are like a couple of the main ways that people get north and south through Sandy Springs. Now, keep in mind that this road, Highway 9, has a lot more traffic lights. Highway 400, however, is much more like an interstate, so it's a lot faster moving, but it's also more popular. So when there are traffic jams, you're going to definitely see those traffic jams on Highway 400. Another thing about this downtown area is that it's really easily walkable. There are not a lot of city centers in Metro Atlanta that are as easily walkable as Sandy Springs. So this is really convenient. If you lived really close to here, it would be very easy to walk to and from the different shops and the different restaurants around here. So certainly a highlight of being right around this Sandy Springs area. And then continuing on Highway 9, you can see there in the background a bunch more shopping areas. This is what, for the most part, what Sandy Springs looks like. It's this kind of lots of commercial areas, lots of shopping. There are a few like more residential parts of Sandy Springs, but for the most part, this is kind of what this city looks like. It's going to be a lot of densely populated commercial areas with a few different neighborhoods spread out throughout the city. This is kind of different than like, you know, any one of the other suburbs like Marietta maybe, or Suwanee, which is mostly residential areas and has a few different shopping or commercial areas here and there throughout the city. Also, keep in mind, if you're thinking about moving to Sandy Springs, or you just have any questions about what it's like to live here, I really don't mind if you call, text, or email me anytime. I'm the one who answers the phone. I'm the one who answers those text messages and those emails. So I really appreciate everybody who has been reaching out, asking me about moving to Sandy Springs. It's really my pleasure to help you make the move to the Sandy Springs area. All right, so moving along a little bit, we've made it over here to Johnson Ferry Road. Again, this is kind of a typical road that you would see here in Sandy Springs. You can see the shopping areas in the background. A lot of like the residential parts of Sandy Springs would be like behind these shopping centers. You know, like the main shopping and the main commercial parts are going to be on these main roads, Johnson Ferry Road being this one. And then those residential areas would be kind of off of these main roads. So as long as we're on roads like Highway 9 or Johnson Ferry, this is what it's going to look like for the most part. Definitely lots of shopping here. Here in the distance, I see Brewster's Ice Cream Place. There's a Team Rehabilitation Physical Therapy there in the background. An orthodontics place, a Shanghai Alterations, Karate Atlanta. You know, just to give you an idea of what these stores are, that's kind of what we're looking at here in Sandy Springs. There's also a State Farm there in the background, and Arden's Garden as well. I think another thing about this Sandy Springs City Center is that it's looks relatively newer. It's not like some of the older city centers like in Kennesaw or Marietta that's a whole bunch of that red brick building everywhere. This is a bit of a newer area, so a lot of these buildings are newer, which you can certainly feel as you're walking down these streets. You can tell that these buildings and this area was built more recently than some of the other city centers around Metro Atlanta. When it comes to buying a home here in Sandy Springs, I'd say the average home price around here is about $8,000 to $850,000 for a home. You have to really keep in mind that the distance to Atlanta from Sandy Springs really makes it a very desirable area to live. And so because there is so much demand for homes here, that means that the average home price is going to be a little higher here than in some of the other suburbs. Now, you certainly could find a 3-bed, 2-bath home in this city for as low as $400,000, but it's going to be a bit of an older home, you know, maybe built in the 70s. So again, you could find a home for that price, but it's certainly going to be a home that needs some work done. For a more modern home or a home that has some kind of recent remodeling, you're looking at more like at least $700,000 to $800,000 for a home. In this city center area, the infrastructure looks really good. You know, I don't see a lot of above ground power line poles. They seem to have done a good job of hiding those power lines. And so the roads look pretty good here. I don't see a lot of potholes in the roads here. But off of this main city center area, it's a bit different. There are certainly some parts of Sandy Springs where the infrastructure is not nearly as good. The thing is that Sandy Springs, being so close to Atlanta, is a city that has been developed for a long time. It's not like a newer city that is just now developing a lot of population growth. Sandy Springs has been experiencing people living here and it being developed for a long time because it's just outside of Atlanta. So this is relatively a much older city than some of the other suburbs of Atlanta. And because of that, there are certain parts of Sandy Springs that have terrible infrastructure, and there are other parts of Sandy Springs that have kind of experienced more remodeling or restructuring, so those parts have much better infrastructure. There's a very wide range of like that discrepancy between the sucky parts of Sandy Springs that have terrible infrastructure and the good parts, much more so than some of the other newer suburbs. Suburbs that have experienced recent growth like Canton or Cumming. Those cities are for the most part kind of similar throughout when it comes to the infrastructure. All right, so we've made our way over here to Sandy Springs Circle. Again, just a couple blocks from the city center. And again, it looks pretty similar. There's a lot of these kinds of commercial areas and stores right around here. Also really good walkability. Really, the sidewalks here are not like super sketchy, like in some parts of Metro Atlanta, you could be walking in the sidewalk and it's like 2 feet wide and you're walking right next to all of the traffic and the cars. Not so around here. In this city, they've done a great job of making sure that these walkways are super convenient for pedestrians, which makes it really nice, especially if you're living around here and you're walking around here. It's much safer than some of the other parts of Metro Atlanta. And that actually brings up a really good point about safety. I know a lot of people ask, is this area a safe area? Is Atlanta a safe city? Or is this suburb safe? And it really is all kind of relative. Whether or not that area is safe, for the most part, depends on what you're used to. You could come from an area that is more urban, like Atlanta or any one of these other super densely populated cities, and you might feel like this suburb is very safe. Or you could come from an area that has like no crime at all, and you would think that this area does have a lot of crime. So it really is relative, and it depends on what you're used to. In my opinion, as a Metro Atlanta resident, I think Sandy Springs is a very safe area. This is not the kind of suburb where you find a lot of crime. It's certainly, like we said earlier, it's really a city that has a pretty high average household income. So it's not the kind of city where there is a lot of crime here, if I could correlate those two things. So yeah, in general, Sandy Springs is a very safe city, especially when it comes to some of the other suburbs of Metro Atlanta. I certainly trust Sandy Springs to be an area where I would feel comfortable with my kids and my family, but there are some downsides to living in this city. If you want a full list of the pros and the cons of living in Sandy Springs, check out this video. I'll see you there.